Great. Well, here we are at 12:01, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us for this workshop on developing your project plan and budget for your REACH application. We are excited to have you here, and we're also very excited to introduce the newest member of our REACH team. Her name's Estella Shep, and she joined our team on Friday as our fiscal and project coordinator. That might not be her exact title, so don't quote me on that. But if you are awarded funding, ultimately, she will work with you on setting up your subawards and processing invoices and that kind of thing. So everybody, welcome Estella, and hopefully you will be working more with her this fall. Great. I'm going to jump in and give you a brief overview of all of the templates that are required as part of your Rocky Mountain REACH submission. Actually, I'm going to respond to Tyler first. I was asking about this meeting. And we are recording this session, so it will be available after today, and we are going to leave a good amount of time at the end for your questions. So first, is everyone seeing my screen all right? Okay, so this is the Gantt chart project plan template that you will need to upload as part of your application. Karen is going to go into this a little bit more in depth, but I just wanted to show it to you as part of this general overview. And then this is the budget template. It's pretty simple. Again, I'll go over it a little bit more in depth in just a moment, but this is what it looks like. And then we have the, sorry, too many things open. Then this is our budget justification, the narrative, and it has some pretty detailed instructions here as well. And then the final upload that is required as part of your application is the bio sketch. And this is a pretty standard NIH template. But if you do have any questions, I won't be going into huge detail on this, as I assume that most of you have seen this form before. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask that at the end, and Karen and I can answer, or feel free to send us an email or attend the office hours next week. So as I said, these are the 4 templates that are required as part of your application. As I mentioned in our kickoff email, unfortunately, through the web portal, they only accept uploads as PDFs for all of these templates. We are hoping that that will change at some point. We're working with the third-party provider of the platform that we use to accept applications. But for now, if we can't get that changed, just export these as a PDF, do your best. I know that Excel, especially the Gantt template, is like a nightmare to try and get as a PDF. Just upload it, and then I'll reach out after you submitted your application to get the final Excel document. So don't worry too much about that. There is also an optional upload for a full formatted application that you can submit that will have, you can do your narrative with figures and that kind of thing. You're welcome to upload that in addition to filling out the form, or you can just upload figures there and reference them in the form fields on the application website. But you do need to actually fill out the form on the application website. All right, I'm going to jump in to a brief overview of the budget template. Like I said, this is pretty straightforward. We developed this template from the University of Montana's Office of Sponsored Programs subaward template. So hopefully you have been in contact or you will be in contact with your Office of Sponsored Programs or equivalent. They can give you a lot of help on developing your budget if you do need that assistance. Or again, you can ask at the end of this or attend our office hours the next 2 weeks. The couple things that I do want to note here is for each institution, you'll obviously have your own individual indirect cost rate. And we are paying, so the grant award is up to $50,000 in addition, and we also cover the IDCs on top of that. So make sure that you have the correct indirect cost rate there. Also make sure that you have the correct decimal points on that spreadsheet, because I think that maybe Boise's might be 47.5 or something like that. That just, and we'll double check that as well, but that's something that we did not catch on one person budget last year. And I will also note this modified total direct cost rate here. That does vary from institution to institution. I know that the University of Montana, doesn't include things like participant support, certain expenditures over $25,000, that kind of thing in the modified total direct cost, and the indirect cost is assessed on that MTDC. So again, work with your Office of Sponsored Programs to figure out exactly what is included or not included in your MTDC so that we can accurately assess your indirect costs. I will say that we're really encouraging you all to meet with your OSP. But if for some reason, like there is something on here that shouldn't be included in your MTDC and is, like, we're not going to really ding you for that. That's something that we can double check, but just something to be aware of that we learned from our last cycle. Our last cycle, we also we were tying the budget a little bit more in with the project plan GANTT. And I think this is something, again, that Karen will talk about. And we were having folks break out their budget by milestones. And we are not doing that this year, just to kind of simplify things, especially since it's a $50,000 award. This is all you'll need to fill out for your budget. And again, ask if you have any questions there. And then the budget justification, as I mentioned, does have some really great explanations for what should be included in each of these categories, with examples. I'll note again down here, there is something about the modified total direct cost base, noting that it does vary by institution. Really, we're hoping that this is an easy enough template for you to use, but we are here if you do have any questions. And we will work with you once you're finally awarded on really like shoring up the budget and making sure that all the costs make sense and that kind of thing. That is part of our onboarding process for our funded projects. I'm going to go ahead and actually open it up to questions about the budget templates. Feel free to put something in the chat, raise your hand if you have questions here. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Karen to talk about the Gantt chart. Okay, seeing no questions, I'll turn it over to Karen to dive into the Gantt, which I think is the more complicated of the documents. Go ahead, Karen.
Perfect. Let me pull this up and make sure you can see that okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. So hopefully I'm having some issues with making this bigger, but there we go. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to look through kind of the questions that are included in the Rocky Mountain Reach application. You'll see some targeted questions about the unmet need and the market potential and description of your technology, et cetera. And I think, as researchers who have a comfort around building kind of that story of why and a certain intervention or product is needed, what the uniqueness is of your technology and kind of highlighting the research that you've done, you're pretty well positioned to answer those questions. We saw really high scores last year in those different categories, and we have some posted materials that can help you just on our YouTube page if you want to put something on in the background as you're writing up, kind of seeing how you want to target and what kind of language that you want to use. Definitely check out our YouTube page for some of those categories. But we wanted to host this workshop live again this year because I think this is a huge transition for a lot of people to start moving from more of like basic or translational research mindset and into a product development approach. So typically, I think when you write a grant, you kind of say what you're going to do, you set these big goals, and if you get most of them done, like that's like really good. Like if you hit 90% of the way there, like you've nailed it. But we're not asking you to write up your project plan for this with that approach. We really want you to look at it from more of a targeted standpoint of how can I identify what activities, what studies, what new features or pieces of this product do I need to conduct and to do to demonstrate so that the product shows performance, shows efficacy, maybe safety for sure if you're getting that far. Really just showing that those key characteristics are in there, and you can have someone who's looking at the phase of the project where you've completed this reach funding, you've gotten to through your final milestones, and they're like, wow, this looks great, let's put more money into this project. And so it's just a different mindset. We want you to be really tactical in your approach of like, how can I use this $50,000 to get to that next level? And so, the application has a kind of detailed write up of what the project plan is. It says provide an overview of the work plan for this project, including 1, technical development activities, and you can probably associate that with this first milestone on here. 2, expected commercialization activities, and 3, any expected regulatory activities. So there's an opportunity for you to write it out in long form text, but kind of the purpose of going through with this Gantt chart is, for review purposes. I think a lot of our reviewers are industry experts. The technology guidance committee that the NIH puts together surely is, and they're used to looking at projects that are based on product development in this frame. They're better capable of giving you good feedback on what you're going to do with this $50,000 if you have a really detailed plan of the activities, what the output is of those activities, and what that timeline looks like. So that's kind of an orientation to the purpose of this from the review standpoint, and then thinking about it from the standpoint of we're going to be working really closely with you over the next year. So right now I'm doing the project management for our 5 funded projects from our first cohort, and so monthly we're pulling this up, we're looking at it, we're adjusting our milestones. If milestone 1 and 2 is supposed to be done in 3 months, and then we have to shift it over because something happened, some feedback, some tool didn't come in, then we do that and we adjust. And so from a practical standpoint, this just gives you an opportunity to create this living document during the application process, get feedback on it, hone the document, and then we're going to be working with it for the next year. So hopefully by the end of this process, you actually like working with Gantt charts. I don't know if you will, but I would love that feedback if anyone wants to just give me kind of like a freebie on the review process of this Rocky Mountain Reach Award that we're executing. Okay, I'm going to pause there before I kind of orient you to this document if you have any questions. Okay, perfect. Okay. Oh, Sorry, did I miss someone?
Yeah.
Hi,
So I have a
Devish.
question. Yes. So we always think of in terms of specific aims for those academic grants. So what are the typical number of milestones expected in a 1 year grant? I see M11 on the screen. Do you have,
So there should be, yeah, good question. Um, don't be overwhelmed by this template. It's really going to be varied. Some people, I see project plans where a milestone has 2 activities under it. Some milestones have 5 activities under it, or they go even longer just because they want to think about it kind of in a stepwise, like waterfall approach of like, I need to do this, then I need to do this. The expectation isn't necessarily that you'll have, in this one, it has 3 milestones on it. Um, it's not that you'll have a ton of things accomplished by the $50,000 goals, but that you're thinking about this in the mindset of like, what are the technical developments that we have to complete, which might be the bulk of your um, activities and your budget for this first award for sure. What are the commercialization activities that we have to complete? This might be something as simple as going through I-Core and doing customer discovery, like one activity under this milestone to get some validation of your market there. And then 3 is, what is 3? Technical development, commercialization, and then the application is going to ask you to describe any regulatory activities that you expect.
And
Also, again,
Karen,
might be 1. Yeah.
I might just throw in that this, you might have been referencing this section, the M1 through, it's actually 12. That's like for so this would be like month 1, month 2. So this is so you can build out the timeline of what
Oh, okay.
month of the project of the year of the award you're going to be working on certain activities. That's what that section is over there.
yeah, that was definitely a confusion. I was thinking that was milestone.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for the catch, Levy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me just give you an orientation. So chart, project name, name of the PI, last updated. This is kind of just for the purposes of working with the um the the project plan throughout the course of the year. But first, we'll go through this. So milestone 1, like I said earlier, would be something that's related probably to your technical development. It's something that you're probably going to be the most close to, that you understand. So understanding the difference between a milestone and an activity is fairly important. So in the first milestone, that's like your big, almost, it's not your specific aim, but it would be kind of like your specific aim in a grant. So at the end of accomplishing activity 1 through 5 of milestone 1, what do you have to show? What's this quantifiable outcome? It could be something like the prototype has been developed, but we hope that you can kind of get a little bit closer to something that you can measure, like we have 90% specificity on this prototype, something that's quantifiable and a goal that you're trying to achieve from the technical development aspect. And then the activities are really the tasks that need to happen between where you're at in the project to get to that milestone. So it might be running a specific test, getting to a point where you have X number of sample pills or tablets if it's a drug. Maybe doing some analytical development where you've shown that it's similar to an HPLC curve that you found published in the literature. Things like that that lead up to you having your said prototype. The output can be very simple, but it's kind of thinking about it of like, what are you going to do, the activity, and what is going to come out of it? Like, what is the end result of having accomplished that activity? And then, so that's milestone, activity, output. And then dependencies, this is a way where we can kind of look at it from more of a project management standpoint. So you can point to the activities that go that are kind of like the rate limiting steps to getting to that next activity. So if this was, yeah, the analytical test against the HPLC curve, then this might be a, and that is activity A13, then dependency might just be A.1.1, like pretty simple of just like what has to be done, what needs to be accomplished before you reach the milestone. And then you'll see in the text of the project plan question that there are some risks and mitigation strategies that you might want to describe, indications of progress of the activity that you can detail more in like free form here. And then Devashish, this would be like, it's going to take me the first 6 months to do, so I'm going to block this out. The activity that we do after this is dependent on A.1.3. So I'm not going to be able to start it till month 7, if that makes sense. And we'll kind of finalize these dates once we get the project actually funded and everything, but this is a good framework to work with for now. I'm still orienting you. Am I missing anything? So milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, activities, outputs, dependencies, risk and progress, kind of timeline. Something to note is that because milestone 1 is really probably going to be something related to technical development and meeting X quantifiable measure. Milestone 2, like you might have some grad students who are doing customer discovery for you, so might be working on some market analysis plans. Those things can happen concurrently, so don't think of this as like I need to achieve milestone 1 and then I need to accomplish milestone 2. Once that's done, these things might be happening concurrently. In milestone 3, I'm just going to write this in so I don't forget, because this is the exact kind of framework that they give you for writing out the project plan in the application. So kind of thinking about these as like 3 things that you really, 3 different tracks of work that need to happen, and they might have varying levels of budget, of priority, of a number of activities underneath them. Okay, let me pause there before I get into resource, because that's really just kind of tying it more to your budget. Yes, Devashish.
Yeah, so can you give some examples of regulatory activities?
Sure. Regulatory activities that we've seen in our projects might be prepping a pre-IND package for a drug, or it might be a pre-IDE package for a device. If that's a little too later stage for where you're at in the development, it might be identifying a regulatory consultant to do an analysis on pathways. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I probably have to come to some offices. I think I need probably a little bit more detail.
Yeah,
So,
it's so variable based on where the project is and like what the technical aspect is, but thinking about it maybe as interactions with the FDA, if that's necessary, or yeah, registering a business, maybe that might be something. Registering not a business, a trademark or a copyright.
Yeah, so you said it's really dependent on the project and what stage it's at. So it may or may not include going as far as getting class 1, class 2, class 3 approval.
Yeah, definitely. It might be just something that you allot 5 hours of your time to, and you have a discussion or two with various regulatory consultants, just making sure that you're gaining traction in that realm. What other questions?
I might add on to that a little bit, Karen, and just so our external review board is going to be looking at this Gantt chart, and I think that part of the third milestone as well, like, could be things that kind of show that the ERB that you know what your next step might be after reach funding. So kind of preparing for that, like to launch the next phase of the project after you're done with reach funding. I think that like this Gantt template and the reach funding is just a small chunk of this overall project that's probably going to need quite a bit more than $50,000 to make it to the market. So really, like, this is helpful to help position the project for the next step, and the Gantt chart is important for helping show the ERB that you kind of understand what the you know what the takeoff point is going to be after this. Yeah, Debashish?
Yes, so along those lines, can human sampling, actually collecting human samples to test your technology, be part of that? Or
Yeah. Is that correct, Karen?
Yes. So there are some pieces that we need to work through if you are going to do like human um, biomedical research, like a clinical trial or human subjects research. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we haven't hit that point in like and I apologize, Deborah, she said I don't remember what your technology is, but we haven't hit that point for like a drug or a device that we're working with right now. There are a couple, actually no, that's not true. We have a device that's doing human subjects right now. Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a couple regulatory hurdles that we have to work with the NIH through, but you can do that.
Yeah. So my point was, can we be developing an IRB application and all those things to be able to prepare ourselves for the next step, which would involve actually collecting out and testing our technology with human samples?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
if you use the funds for that, we would want that IRB approval to submit to the NIH.
Yeah.
And I'll also note here that previous REACH cohorts have done their projects in more like a stage gated funding mechanism where the award is a little bit bigger. And so like at the end of each milestone, there's this decision point that you can see. And that used to include like a go, no go gate where, we look at how, what point we're at after milestone 1, and if it makes sense to release more funding. We're not doing that. But that's kind of why this is broken out this way. And we do find that it's helpful in just developing a project plan overall. So, if you get to the end of milestone 1 and the decision point is to completely redo milestone 2 because what you had there doesn't make sense, like, that's totally fine. This is a living, working document that you will be updating every month with one of our project managers, and it is going to be updated based on the results of each activity that you perform. So this is just like either like ideal scenario or like where we think this will go or where we hope this will go. But that's kind of why this is what the template that we've been provided, why it's set up in this milestone sort of broken out format, if that's helpful.
So I feel like a lot of people will often get into this template and kind of just like seeing the blank screen as like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? And totally fair. there are some resources that we have available to help you. We had this type of recording that's posted on YouTube from last year that can support. And I'm also very willing to set up just one-on-one time with you. Lydie can share my booking link with her follow-up of this meeting if you want support developing this. This is an overused like industry statement, but I like to say it still, it applies. Like starting with the end in mind can really be beneficial. And so I think everyone on this call with their project at this current phase can agree that they're probably going to need more than $50,000 to bring this to commercialization. So I think the end in mind could fall under this commercialization activities. What are you doing in month 12? Is it submitting an SBIR, or is it meeting with angel investors, whatever? What is that output to get you there so that you don't have this gap in funding at the end of the year? And then just working backwards from that point of follow-on funding. I don't say that just because of the money, just because it's kind of like this anchor point that you can use in your mind. Like when you've been talking to people about your technology and innovation, like what questions are arising? Like what do you need to show to them for them to see, for them to want to be willing to invest more money into you? And so kind of working backwards from that commercialization standpoint, then maybe you get into the technical development of like, what are you showing, like what stage of your prototype are you at by the end of the year to attract that follow-on funding. And that could actually honestly be the case for regulatory too. Like I think a lot of, especially in the med tech space, which is where I have a lot of more experience, having some of those regulatory endpoints that are like pre-submission with the FDA and gathered FDA feedback. That's a really tangible thing that you can talk to an investor about or put in your SBIR application to say that you're making progress. So working backwards would be a suggestion, but also, reach out if you're just staring at this and like, I have zero idea where to start. Okay. Definitely want to leave plenty of time to chat more through questions, but that kind of gives you an outline of milestone, quantifiable measure, the activities that need to be completed to hit that milestone, output expected, dependencies, risks, timeline. And then these sections are really to tie more to the budget. Hopefully using this framework will be beneficial to you to say, okay, like what resource do I need? Do I need X amount of time from a graduate student to be able to accomplish this? Do I need to identify a contract research organization? I'm not sure that you'll be at that stage, but maybe you do, like finding an outside vendor. Do I need to identify someone in the business school or business commercialization institute at your university to do a market analysis for you? Just kind of thinking of this and being mindful of what resources you need and what type of budget. This is budget category, which there's some examples here like salaries that ties really closely to the budget that Lydie shared. But thinking about the resourcing that you really need to identify where you might need our help. Like it's not that you need to go out and have these calls going into the application, but if we know going in that you're going to need a user experience expert to talk through your app development, then we can help bring that resource in for you, and just associating budget with it so that you can kind of work hand in hand with your project plan and budget to marry it all up. Questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to pause there. I think that's kind of all the yeah, legwork that I can do to help set you up for success, not digging into your projects. But feel free to set up some time with me if this is an activity that really is new to you. Bernard. It looks like you're muted, but well, it sounds like you're muted on my end. Double muted somehow. Do you want to type it into the chat? Other questions?
I might also just add again that I don't think that I think that when we're reviewing the applications, we will look at the cost estimate column. Oops, did not mean to do that. And just it's more for us to see that what you're proposing like makes sense within the budget. But we're not gonna like the budget template is like the final budget document, and if for some reason like they don't match up perfectly or whatever, like that's fine. The budget template will be the final budget document, but you know, it might be useful to start here in the Gantt chart, so that you can break it out and then total it all up in the other template. Bernard, were you able to? Sorry. Oh, here we go. Here's the question I can ask Karen for the
research. Are we required to have ICOOK, IPC, or IRB approval at time of submission? Not at time of submission. Lydie, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
But by the time, yeah.
By the time the work, if you're proposing human or vertebrate animal subjects, you will need to provide that before you start that work. But we don't need it with our submission. You would just need it if you're ultimately funded. We do have to submit, we have to, you know, create a study record. So that is something that, you know, once we send our projects to the TGC, if you're one of those projects, we might just send you the list of all the documentation that we're going to need. That will happen in July, just so that you can have that ready and we can sort of get it all plugged in so that when, you know, if you're ultimately awarded funding, that we're ready to go. Because that was an administrative delay that we saw on our projects last year, but won't be quite as bad this year because we won't have to actually get approval. We just need to make sure everything's correct in the study record. Tal?
Yeah, quick question. Should I apply for 1 year or 2 year, or there's no difference between this? So this should be a 1 year project, or okay. 1 year project.
This is the 1 year project. So each of our funded projects is eligible to get up to $100,000 in total, well, in direct costs. So we've basically built this stage gate in just because a lot of our universities don't have these standard like gap fund type awards that you would see. So this initial $50,000 is for the first year. Upon completion, you'll be eligible to reapply, you know, just update your project plan with where you're at following the $50,000 to get that next stage of funding.
Also, one more question. Do we need to get our Office of Technology Transfer kind of letter from them confirm this is a new potential patent and never, you know, cannot be found in the database or something like that? Do you need any document from them for that purposes?
That's something we might implement in future years. Right now, there's not really a really great place to put it in the portal, and we don't have a lot of great application control over the portal. We have each of your technology transfer offices or representatives from them on our program steering committee. And so on the back end, we say, here's the project. Do you support it? And they confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was it.
Do you
Thanks.
support it? This is the stage of development and the IP protections. Yes, please move forward, or no. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So
Thanks.
highly encourage you to talk to them, because at least in the application, there's questions. Have you discussed? Is there a provisional patent filed, etc.? So
Yeah.
it does,
Yeah,
your
that,
IP does need to be at appropriate stages.
yeah, that's why I want to make sure that I understand it correctly. Do I need any formal documentation from them?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. We probably will implement it. So if anyone's watching this recording in future years, yeah, disregard what I just said. But for this year, we're not asking for a letter of support or a letter of commitment. Joel.
Yeah, so is a provisional patent sufficient then for that
Absolutely.
stage? It doesn't need to be further than that.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
That's great.
And then which documents of the ones that are submitted would you say are the critical ones that you spend most of your time, or that are the most if people don't do a good enough job, which are the key ones where they should have spent more time? Like, what are the typical pitfalls you see, and where people should have taken a better approach or put more explanation in it, I guess?
Good question.
Yeah. I might say that, the narrative of the application form is really important. This Gantt chart is something that our external review board looks at. I mean, they look at all the documents. But I think that, like, since this is a format that that not everyone is really familiar with, and it is different from a traditional grant that has the specific aims versus milestones type thing, I do think that there's a little bit more wiggle room with this kind of document. If, like, what you're talking about in the application makes sense as far as the project plan, but it's not like 100% represented here. Like, that's a part of the onboarding process for our funded projects, where we look at this document versus the application narrative with you and really, like, get it to a final place before we award funding. And it's not a thing where, like, we come in and say, like, you need to change this and this. It is a conversation. It's a collaborative process. It's something that we all do together so that the final document makes sense for Reach, but also makes sense for your project. But again, I think that, like, if something is misrepresented in this Gantt chart but makes sense in the narrative, then that they're going to be weighing the narrative more than the uploads, I would say. Karen, do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I do. Like, I hesitate to say don't spend too much time on this.
Yeah.
By any stretch, just because, as our collective universities become more targeted towards more commercialization support, entrepreneurship support, everything, we're getting better every year. And as this program progresses, we'll get better every year. But so I wouldn't say that it's something that I would neglect, just because if there were two equal projects from the standpoint of, like, basis of the project, unmet need, all of that piece, innovation in the technology, the team that has this plan well outlined, even if it's going to change completely, but the team that has put in the thought to create a pathway for themselves and give enough information in this document and in the narrative portion of the project plan for the reviewers to give detailed feedback on and say, oh, you're going wrong here, but you can pivot here. They're going to just score better.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking.
Other questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions about the application process or other components of the application, upcoming workshops?
We'll just share our timeline really fast. I can find it. Here's our application timeline again. So we have office hours the next 2 Wednesdays at this time, and then our project pitch workshop at the end of the month. The draft application is due on Friday the 25th. We have our pitch practice sessions on the 30th, and I will be sending out the scheduling links for the practice sessions and the project pitch sessions again if you didn't get a chance to sign up. And I will say that we do have a little bit of flexibility now on this Wednesday the 30th date, trying to fit all 14 of you in on one day. Doesn't sound like a great day, no offense to us. Yeah, I know that a couple of us are working one-on-one on scheduling around some travel and that kind of thing. So I'll work with you to get that scheduled pretty quickly. But if you are able to schedule on that Wednesday the 30th, I'll send the link again. And then your applications are due Friday, May 9th through our portal. And then after the pitch sessions, you are just in the waiting pattern while we evaluate everything. And I'll send out the links to everything in my follow-up email after this call. So you'll have the next calendar invites and everything for the next couple weeks. And does everyone have copies of all of the templates? Do I need to send those out again? Okay, well, let me know if you need them. I can definitely send those out one more time if needed.
Any final questions before we sign off? Well, great to see everyone. We're excited to see the full applications. We're really excited about the innovations that you're proposing. So reach out.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.